Section 1. The Ghost in the Machine. April 29, 1944. London, Norfolk House, St. James's Square. Rain streaks down the windows of the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. Inside a cramped office on the third floor, a man who will never fire a rifle is about to change the course of the war. Colonel John Bevan stands over a table covered with maps, photographs, and typewritten intelligence reports. He is 50 years old, gray-streaked hair, wire-rimmed spectacles, a former stockbroker who now runs the most elaborate con game in human history. Before him lies the blueprint for Operation Fortitude South. Not a battle plan, not a bombing route, not an invasion schedule. A lie. A fabricated narrative so intricate, so psychologically calibrated, that it will convince Adolf Hitler to keep 150,000 soldiers waiting for an invasion that will never come. Bevan picks up a decoded message from Bletchley Park. German High Command has taken the bait. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt believes the Allies will strike at Pas-de-Calais. So does Hitler himself. They see exactly what we want them to see, Bevan mutters. In 5 weeks, the largest amphibious invasion in history will hit the beaches of Normandy. But in the minds of German intelligence officers, the real blow is coming elsewhere. The Americans are massing a massive army in southeast England, a force called the 1st United States Army Group. FUSAG. 1 million men, thousands of tanks, hundreds of landing craft. None of it exists. Imagine a secret weapon so potent it could single-handedly manipulate an entire enemy intelligence network, all without firing a single shot. This isn't a spy thriller. This is the true story of how Allied psychological warfare officers played mind games with the Wehrmacht, created a phantom army from nothing but radio waves and rumor, and convinced German High Command to divert vital resources at the most critical moment of the war. This is how lies won the war. Section 2. The Architect of WWII. To understand how the Allies deceived the Third Reich, you must first understand who built the deception. Colonel John Bevan headed the London Controlling Section, a secret unit tasked with strategic deception. But Bevan was not alone. Working alongside him was an extraordinary cast of intelligence officers, psychologists, and double agents who understood something the Germans never grasped. The enemy believes what he wants to believe. Lieutenant Colonel Noel Wild served as Bevan's chief planner. A former artillery officer with a gift for theatrical thinking, Wild approached deception like a playwright approaches drama. Every element had to ring true. Every detail had to satisfy the audience. The audience in this case was the Abwehr, German military intelligence. The Germans are brilliant analysts, Wild told his team during a planning session in February 1944. But they have a fatal weakness. They cannot imagine that we would attempt something so audacious. Their own minds will fill in the gaps we leave. Working from captured interrogation reports and decoded Enigma intercepts, Wild's team built a psychological profile of German military thinking. They identified patterns, biases, blind spots. The Germans expected the Allies to take the shortest route across the English Channel. Pas-de-Calais, 21 miles from Dover, good beaches, direct route to the industrial heart of Germany. It made perfect strategic sense, which is exactly why the Allies would attack somewhere else. But convincing the Germans that Calais remained the primary target, that was the masterpiece. That required understanding not just military strategy but human psychology, fear, desire, confirmation bias. The Allies didn't just deceive German intelligence. They weaponized German intelligence against itself. Section 3. Building a Ghost. March 1944. The English countryside around Dover. British sappers and American engineers work through the night, constructing an army that exists only in shadow. Rubber tanks, painted canvas aircraft, plywood landing craft bobbing in harbors. From the air, reconnaissance photographs would show a massive military buildup. Sherman tanks lined up in neat rows. P-47 Thunderbolts parked on airfields. Troop barracks spreading across the landscape. On the ground, it was all high-low. Colonel David Strangeways commanded the deception units in the field. A man with a theatrical background and a wicked sense of humor, Strangeways understood that successful deception required attention to the details the enemy expected to find. "It's not enough to show them tanks," Strangeways explained. "We need tire tracks, we need mess tents, we need latrines, we need laundry on the line. A German photo interpreter will look for signs of life. We give him signs of life." Inflatable Sherman tanks appeared overnight, 250 of them. When the wind blew too hard, 2 soldiers could carry one to a new position. But the physical dummies were only the surface layer. The real deception happened in the electromagnetic spectrum. Section 4. The Symphony of Static. The wireless transmissions began in January 1944. From positions across southeast England, radio operators began broadcasting the daily administrative traffic of a massive army group. Supply requisitions, personnel transfers, unit assignments, artillery coordinates. All of it false, but all of it perfectly crafted to sound exactly like the genuine communication of an army preparing for invasion. "This is Quicksilver," the operations radio component was called. German signals intelligence, the Funkabwehr, monitored Allied radio traffic obsessively. They tracked call signs. They analyzed transmission patterns. They triangulated positions. The Allies gave them everything they expected to find. 22 fake divisions, 11 fake corps, 3 fake armies, all coordinated under the banner of FUSAG. And at the head of this phantom force, the Allies placed the one commander the Germans feared most, General George S. Patton. The choice was psychological genius. Patton was flamboyant, aggressive, unpredictable. The Germans believed he was the Allies' best combat commander. They tracked his movements obsessively. When Patton appeared in southeast England, visiting units and making public speeches, German intelligence took notice. "Patton is in Dover," read one Abwehr report forwarded to Berlin. "The main assault must be coming to Calais." They never realized Patton was playing a role. After the slapping incident in Sicily, when Patton struck 2 hospitalized soldiers and nearly ended his career, he had been relieved of combat command. Now he was the perfect decoy, famous enough to convince the Germans, idle enough to participate in the charade. "I'm a goddamn actor in a British pantomime," Patton complained to his diary. He didn't know how right he was. Section 5. The Double Game. But radio traffic and rubber tanks could only go so far. To truly cement the deception, the Allies needed voices inside German intelligence itself. They had them. Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed GARBO, was a Spanish double agent who had built a fictional network of subagents supposedly operating across Britain. From his safe house in London, Garcia fed German intelligence a steady stream of reports, all carefully crafted by British handlers to reinforce the fortitude narrative. His fictional agents reported troop movements in southeast England, overheard conversations about Calais, observations of landing craft massing in Dover. The Germans believed every word. "GARBO is our most valuable source in Britain," the Abwehr's report to Berlin stated in April 1944. They didn't know he was reading his lines from a script written in Norfolk House. Garcia wasn't alone. Roman Czerniawski, codenamed BRUTUS, was a Polish officer the Germans believed they had turned into a spy. Dushko Popov, codenamed Tricycle, fed false intelligence from a playboy lifestyle in Lisbon. The entire German spy network in Britain had been identified, captured, and either executed or converted to double agents. Every piece of intelligence reaching Berlin about Allied invasion plans came from sources controlled by the Allies themselves. The WWII was blind. Worse than blind. They were seeing exactly what the Allies wanted them to see. Section 6. The Moment of Crisis. June 5, 1944, 2200 hours. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands before his senior commanders. The weather has been terrible, high winds, heavy seas. The invasion has already been postponed once. Now comes the decision. Okay, let's go, Eisenhower says. Operation Overlord is a go. But for Colonel Bevan and the deception planners, the real test is just beginning. D-Day isn't the climax of Operation Fortitude. It's the prologue. The Allies know they cannot hide the Normandy invasion. Within hours, German commanders will see the beaches swarming with American, British, and Canadian troops. The question isn't whether the Germans discover the attack. The question is whether they believe it's the real thing, or whether they think it's a feint. June 6, 1944, 6:30 hours, Wolf's Lair, Rastenburg, East Prussia. Adolf Hitler is asleep when the first reports arrive. His staff is reluctant to wake him. When he finally receives the news at 1000 hours, he immediately grasps the strategic implications. But he also believes what his intelligence has been telling him for months. Normandy is a diversion, Hitler declares. The real attack will come at Pas-de-Calais. We must hold our reserves for that blow. The 15th Army, 150,000 men, including some of Germany's best armored divisions, remains in position around Calais, waiting. The Phantom Army has done its work. Section 7. The Enemy REACTS. In the days following D-Day, German commanders in Normandy begged for reinforcements. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commanding Army Group B, understood the danger immediately. The Allies had established a beachhead. American forces were pushing inland. Without reinforcements, the defensive line would collapse. Release the Panzer reserves, Rommel demanded. Hitler refused. Not until we know where the main attack will fall. The deception continued. On June 9, GARBO sent an urgent message to his German handlers. The transmission was deliberately delayed until after the Normandy landings, making it appear genuine rather than planted. I have learned from sources that the Normandy assault is merely a diversionary operation, GARBO reported. The main attack by Patton's 1st United States Army Group will strike at Pas-de-Calais within days. The message reached Hitler's desk within hours. The Führer made his decision. The 15th Army would remain in place. One message, transmitted by a man reading from a British script, holding 150,000 German soldiers in place while their comrades died in Normandy. This was psychological warfare at its most devastating. Section 8. Patton UNLESHED. July 25, 1944, St. Lo, Normandy. After 7 weeks of brutal hedgerow fighting, the American breakout finally begins. Operation Cobra. 1,500 heavy bombers carpet the German lines with high explosives. When the dust settles, Lieutenant General Omar Bradley's 1st Army punches through the shattered defenses. And then comes Patton. On August 1, the Third Army is officially activated. Patton, no longer a decoy, now commanding real armor, races into the breach. His orders from Bradley are simple. Advance, don't stop. Patton doesn't. His armored spearheads cover 20 miles the first day, 30 miles the second, 40 miles the third. I don't want to hear about holding lines or establishing perimeters, Patton tells his officers. I want to hear about ground gained and Germans killed. The Third Army sweeps through Brittany, pivots east, plunges into the French interior. German resistance crumbles, not just from the tanks but from the chaos in German command. The Phantom Army has done its work. The reserves that should have crushed the breakout are still waiting at Calais. By mid-August, Patton's forces have encircled 100,000 German troops at Falaise. The Wehrmacht's Army Group B is collapsing. Field Marshal von Kluge, who replaced Rommel after the latter was wounded, reports to Berlin that the situation is catastrophic. Hitler orders a counterattack. Von Kluge knows it's suicide. But the Führer still believes reinforcements can be pulled from the 15th Army. He is wrong. By the time Hitler finally releases the Calais reserves, it is too late. Patton's tanks are already approaching the Seine. Section 9. The Final Gambit. August 19, 1944, Paris. The French capital is in revolt. Resistance fighters battle German occupation forces in the streets. General Dietrich von Choltitz, the German garrison commander, has orders from Hitler. Destroy the city. Von Choltitz hesitates. Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army races northeast. Supply lines stretch to the breaking point. Fuel trucks can't keep pace with the armored advance. The greatest threat to Patton's momentum isn't German resistance. It's logistics. If Ike gives me the fuel, I'll be in Berlin in 2 weeks, Patton tells Bradley. But resources are diverted. Montgomery's northern advance gets priority. Patton's army grinds to a halt near Metz in September out of gasoline. The war will continue for 8 more months. Yet the decisive psychological blow has already been struck. The German High Command has been humiliated. Their intelligence networks have been exposed as compromised. Their strategic assumptions have proven catastrophically wrong. And they are only now beginning to understand how thoroughly they have been deceived. Section 10. The Reckoning. After the war, Allied intelligence officers interrogated German commanders about their decision-making during 1944. The confessions were remarkable. Colonel Alexis von Rohn, chief of Fremd Heer West, Foreign Armies West, admitted that German intelligence had completely believed the FUSAG deception. Reports of Patton's Phantom Army had seemed entirely credible. The radio traffic analysis confirmed it. The agent reports confirmed it. The reconnaissance photographs confirmed it. Everything confirmed what they already believed. We expected the main attack at Calais, von Rohn stated. Everything the enemy showed us reinforced that expectation. We never considered it might be deliberate. General Gunther Blumentritt, chief of staff to von Rundstedt, was even more blunt. The Allied deception was masterful. We were reading their messages, analyzing their movements, evaluating their capabilities, and every piece of information led us to the wrong conclusion. It was as if they were inside our minds. They were. The London Controlling Section had spent months studying German intelligence methods. They knew which signals the Abwehr monitored. They knew which sources the Germans trusted. They knew the cognitive biases that shaped German strategic thinking. And they exploited every weakness. Section 11. Historical Verdict. Historians have debated the precise impact of Operation Fortitude for decades, but certain facts are beyond dispute. The deception held the German 15th Army in place for 7 critical weeks after D-Day. That's 150,000 men, 19 divisions, hundreds of tanks and artillery pieces. Had those forces been released to Normandy in the first week of June, the outcome of the invasion might have been very different. Operation Fortitude was worth more than a dozen divisions, one post-war analysis concluded. It multiplied Allied combat power without firing a shot. The psychological warfare officers who designed the deception never became famous. Their work remained classified for decades. Colonel John Bevan returned to the financial sector after the war, rarely speaking of his service. Lieutenant Colonel Noel Wild died in 1973, his role in the greatest deception in military history, known only to a handful of colleagues. Juan Pujol Garcia, GARBO, received the Iron Cross from the Germans and the Member of the Order of the British Empire from the British. The only man to be decorated by both sides in the war. He faked his own death in 1949 and lived quietly in Venezuela until researchers finally tracked him down in 1984. "I believed I could help end the war," Garcia later explained. "I believed that lies properly told could save lives." He was right. The Phantom Army killed no one. It fired no weapons. It dropped no bombs. And yet it changed the course of history. Closing, the shadows echo. April 29, 1944, London, Norfolk House. Colonel John Bevan stands over his maps, reading the latest Bletchley Park intercepts. German High Command has swallowed the bait. They believe in FUSAG. They believe in the Calais attack. They believe what they want to believe. In 5 weeks, 156,000 Allied soldiers will storm the beaches of Normandy. Thousands will die. But thousands more will survive because a phantom army keeps German reserves locked in place. "They see exactly what we want them to see," Bevan had muttered. He was right. The war would continue for another year. Millions more would perish before the Third Reich finally collapsed. But the seed of that collapse was planted here, in a cramped London office, by men who understood that the most powerful weapon in warfare isn't a tank or a bomber or an artillery piece. It's the human mind. The Germans built the greatest intelligence apparatus in Europe. They monitored every radio transmission. They analyzed every photograph. They recruited agents across the globe. And they were completely, utterly, catastrophically fooled. Not by superior technology, not by greater resources, not by luck. By psychology. By men who understood that intelligence services don't just gather information, they interpret it, and interpretation is shaped by assumption, by fear, by desire, by the stories people tell themselves about what must be true. The Allies didn't defeat German intelligence. They used German intelligence as a weapon against itself. Imagine a secret weapon so potent it could single-handedly manipulate an entire enemy intelligence network, all without firing a single shot. That weapon was the human mind. And on June 6, 1944, it changed the world. End card **. Operation Fortitude remained classified until 1972. Most of its architects died before their full contributions to Allied victory became publicly known. Today, the techniques they pioneered, disinformation, psychological profiling, strategic deception, remain central to intelligence operations worldwide. The Phantom Army that never existed helped win the greatest war in human history. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is a well-told lie.